you have heard about the Netflix charade of Mr. Curtis coming out. So I have, in the recent past, touched on some of the topics that Mr. Curtis came out with. Now, the first question you have to ask yourself is, if this information were true and somebody had to do it, somebody had to be the king of Tupelo, then you would have caught the parallel universe in those statements, correct? It's a parallel world out here. You live in a comfortable bubble. You can't handle the truth, and that's okay. It's not meant for you to handle if you're fine living in your bubble. It's totally fine. It doesn't mean that his perception of the truth or the rabbit hole that he encountered wasn't in fact the truth. Now, Mr. Curtis in those videos references a letter with poison. He references gang stalking, his property being vandalized. He touches on all these sinister activities, which are very common in initiations or organized activity. They're very common fear tactics if we need to regain control of a human. Scare and fear tactics. Sometimes they go a little far, sometimes they're successful and they go all the way. What I'm here to tell you today to back his story is, unlike him, he fell into the rabbit hole. He saw this with his own eyes. I personally am not going to speak names or categorize. But from my point of view, as he witnessed this activity with his eyes, he chose to go down this rabbit hole based on his hunch and putting pieces together. What I can tell you is, in my situation, I experienced similar. I did not go looking for it. It actually came from me. I received this letter with the codes in the letter that specify different chemicals utilized in the storage of these parts. And in this letter, it also said, if you were a threat to that territory, they would stage a suicide or drug overdose. Well, many of you know, following this letter with poison, that activity played out in my reality. It became my reality. The overdose, it was attempted. And it didn't end there for me. So they call it the rabbit hole. They tried to brush it off with Rosemary's Baby. If you were part of any occult, or if you're, born into a secret society family, you know what that is. But the truth of the matter is my activity went on consistently and consecutively for like 4 years. Some of the people, like I said, were involved. He is not, dishonest when he talks about the level that it goes to, from targeting to attacks. He mentions the CIA. Mine was very much like a mind control and torture program, because I was literally tortured for 4 years. Torture actually isn't even the word. So in my situation, I experienced, I received a letter. It played out. Obviously, like any scared woman would, try to think fast. How do I react without traumatizing my children further? I have no idea what happened here. Obviously, all of these people are trying to cover this up. It's a pretty organized deal, right? It felt like field training. So my natural reactive instincts were to sit down and have an honest conversation with the humans. They knew what was going on. And then we made a move. A friend of mine decided to help us get out of the area temporarily, until I had put a couple of puzzle pieces there that weren't really appropriate, and I decided to navigate north with family. When we got north with this family, it dawned on me that my ex-brother-in-law went through the same activity 2 years prior to mine, and the family went into hiding. We changed names. It was a huge ordeal. So naturally, I'm like, oh my gosh, so I have no idea where this came from. I need to make a quick move, right? Anyway, I come back, I resume my relationship because I couldn't really make sense of what happened. I just knew that eventually I would be able to see things clearly, So anyway, I come back. A lot of the same group is in the background. I'm realizing that everyone is living a parallel life. So what you see on the surface is not reality to what is actually going on behind the scenes. On the scenes, you may see things demonstrated one way, but the truth is one of those people might be connected to another person. And it's like playing game. Everything is a game. Everything is an illusion. When I tell you a mind screw, you wouldn't believe it if you didn't live it. The problem is everyone was so comfortable to the mind games, dark manipulation, and the lying that they lost touch of the reality that they did live. And that's actually what you see playing out here with like my transition into year 2025. Because in my situation, you would have had no clue all of this activity was going on in the background. You would have had no idea that people that you would have thought, you know, we were happy and everything was great, were actually working against me, you know, recording me, telling me I'm a nobody. I mean, these people were going hard. And that's when I started coming forward with the truth. And I found it so refreshing and relieving. As a person who was silenced, oppressed, you know, went through all of that, had it all covered up, was like really manipulated, really tortured, you know, called a Jezebel, like all of the strings were pulled here. And it was nothing more than like it was a combination of like human experiment, but also like the reality of the rabbit hole. You know, there is a parallel world, there is black market activity, there is human movement, there is, for rated R, movement. Like all of these things do go on, and humanity is asleep to it, but it happens right in front of your face. And you know, you watch these people who had a very stable life, a very successful story. These people don't just end up being encountered or targeted and have their life ruined. You know, smear campaigns ran against them, and then someone flip over, you know, and completely try to sabotage and ruin that person. You know, several times it was stated that the devil came to Mississippi. He was looking for a soul to steal. Well, I mean, in my case, that just couldn't happen because I was actually born into it. You know, what do we do? What do we do for individuals who are targeted and are set up to have complete destruction brought to their life, and they encounter complete organized chaos, and perhaps they land in a situation like this where they are tortured, they are mind controlled, they are oppressed, they are silenced, they are like, what are you gonna do? You're a nobody, nobody wants to help you, you're like a blip. And the truth is you're not. You are somebody. Like, you were given a spiritual path on this earth for a reason. And mine was so personal to me. Like, mine was a best friend was involved. You know, mine was my heart. Love was involved. I was under some rose-colored illusion with actors, you know. Either you talk about these staged actors and everybody has a role to play. I was under this illusion that I had come back here to buy a beautiful home, enter a beautiful marriage, and I was going to have a beautiful family. And my reality was vastly different, vastly different. There was a whole parallel operation going on. So yes, to answer your question, what Mr. Curtis came out about, his was speculation. I'm here to tell you that I received the letter I was poisoned. I received the toxicity report, or toxic report. So the letter did play out for me. I did receive the fear and mind control, the organized stalking. I have vandalism on my vehicles. I mean, I was really like, when I tell you, carrying 3 kids through field training is what it felt like. And the world would have never known it. I never stopped being positive. I never stopped being inspirational. I never stopped playing my position as a wife. I stood firm in my integrity. I stood firm in my grace. I was super disappointed in somebody who was once dear to me. I was disappointed because I take home and family and unity and vows with dignity and honor. And I realized quickly that this was, you know, these people were in the field together, and they were more loyal to the name of the game than they were their livelihood of the people that they were sharing a life with. And just watching the attempts at scapegoating the person you were targeting, or recording a person, or torturing them, laughing at them, you know, saying hit them with radiation. I mean, when I tell you the activity was so high, this guy may not have presented himself in a manner where you could take him seriously, because the name of the game is rabbit holes, illusions. It is a mind joke. It is a parallel world, right? Maybe his delivery wasn't the greatest, or he doesn't carry himself so seriously. But when you encounter that journey from a spiritual place and a worldly warfare, you know, you have OES, these are spiritual groups. Illuminati, these are spiritual groups. What Diddy's coming out about, this is like a break, a little shift in the matrix pattern. But these are real things playing out with real people's life. And the world is asleep to these organized sacrifices, spiritual sacrifices. What he's saying to you is not by far a lie. But to have that go down in your own city in these locations, it's not necessarily crime, it's just the underground. And the common general population is asleep to the underground. At a young age, my grandfather told me, I'm a dual Masonic granddaughter. At a young age, my grandfather said, when the time comes, you'll know what to do. You're the Capricorn, you're the goat. And my gosh, I never understood that statement until I took on that worldly battle and I took on that spiritual battle at the same time. And I watched how controlled that the narrative was that I was living and how they can manipulate the reality. You know, the news and the general public or intelligence, they can take a really good person and drive that so hard that they do off themselves, or they do have a staged overdose if they turn their back. You know, the reality, to be able to see the reality from that level of things was such a eye opener. So for Mr. Curtis, he's a brave man. Maybe he's a little comical, which is also good. You have to be at that point. What he's showing you videos of his home, I've lived it. I've lived it. So mine was a little bit different than his. He went looking for it. I never sought to be targeted by these people or this activity, but I did. And the way that I take it is how I react to it, and what I take from it is my responsibility. So if people want to, gaslight, manipulate you, that's okay. That's on them. If people want to try to flip the narrative that you're an abusive, horrible individual, that's okay. They got taken away a little too far with being convinced that apparently you were a nobody while they did it. If people want to try to organize this level of activity against you, that has nothing to do with you. You're not responsible for what people threw at you, how many people at so many directions came for you. You're responsible for what you do with it. And that, a lot of times, my friend, is the anointing in and of itself, is for the Most High to step aside, call pause, no more, you have to break the pattern. You have to break the karmic cycle. You have a voice to speak up. And I really am flattered that Mr. Curtis came forward, because the manipulation that I endured was so crazy. You're crazy, you're making this up, this never happened. If it didn't happen, you can't prove it. In my case, I have a trail of evidence. It was a very sloppy situation. And unfortunately, it didn't stop until just a few months ago. And then he came out with this. And I was laughing at the same people who were trying to downplay the situation. Imagine, sleeping with the enemy. I was laughing because I'm sitting here. I'm like, so is this guy crazy too? Are we going to pull a smear campaign on this guy? And then I had to come back a few seconds, how did this guy get these people to participate in this? And then it's an inherent reality that these things do happen. It is a parallel world. And, Steve Holland said someone has to do it. That's what he means. It is a parallel world. There is an underground world. That reality is shielded from most of the public. But it's a world that has to be ran. And there's a natural order and a natural balance. And typically this is upheld by the Watchers. This is upheld by Men in Black. This is upheld by intelligence. There are several hands in the pot. But to be emotionally rational and to be intelligent enough to see the balance in all these worlds and to be able to receive it, to be able to take it, and not allow yourself to be victimized by it. There's a vast difference in being guided through the matrix and being able to see reality as it is and as it plays out. There's another difference when you're potentially one of those sacrifices, or you're that nobody, or you're that single mom with children that it happens to. Because I will tell you, I didn't ride through this activity alone for 4 years. My kids went through this with me. And watching a system, being a female where the system was broken as a child, my success story is great. I was emancipated at 14. I'm self-made. I climbed the ladder, had a great mentor at a young age. I was a quality manager by 26. And hey, at 27, I jumped down the rabbit hole. I'm 32 now. my perspective is different. You know, my approach was a little more naive. My perspective is much different than it was. But gave up everything. And having no, they'll tell you, like, the master ability to have attachment to nothing is everything. So being that I had already mastered that ability, nothing was taken from me. So like the more that humans tried to humble me or make me suffer or manipulate, delude me, bully me, oppress me, make me feel like I was garbage or I wasn't good enough, I had already exceeded what I came from. So to have external people be welcomed into my life that I should be celebrating with, pass judgment on me, belittle me, and attempt to really brainwash me, it was more disheartening that I was witnessing such activity. You know, watching children be manipulated, watching adults manipulate each other. Everything was based on greed, manipulation, mental control, physical control, and abuse. And just to really have to step back and wrap my head around that activity was just like, this cannot be happening. You know, there are real abusive situations out there like I was subjected to as a child, and that system was broken. You have secret society orders doing this within their own family. This is a broken system. You have the minority, being targeted in the community and possibly being on a chop block or being recycled or being human moved. And it's happening in plain sight and no one is doing anything about it. And there are a lot of females I encountered in the process, that had things physically done to them. And it was all just being like shoved under the blanket. And I think Mr. Curtis really provided a public form of hope for other people to come out about what they experienced. His is based on a perception, based on just a coincidental landing into a situation. Mine is based on a situation that came for me. So all of this took place. A local published author found me. She was big into spiritual practices. She told me to stay away from the person or the people I was with at the time. When all of this went down and I had my persecution happen after my framing and my gang stalking, I was told to stay away from the same person I was with. There was a lot of like spiritual attack and separation, and it was all underground driven. And to try to be able to maintain your position, your dignity, your class, and your loyalty under such a huge spiritual attack by a whole community, not even just one zip code. These were multiple zip codes. It was like mind-boggling until I wanted to play delusion to the part I was defending a spiritual union alone. And I was doing that so much so that I played delusional to the part that was being played against me from that end. And that was my biggest setback, my biggest point of denial. And honestly, that experience really humbled me. It really did. It humbled me. To try to be scapegoated as a witch or as evil or as the devil and all of these different psychological forms of manipulation were just like, wow, these are secret societies who dabble in spiritual work, professing to be Christians, publicly in display in the community. And behind the scenes, they're like tearing each other apart and harming each other and attacking people, recording people. I mean, like just to watch it play out, like even when you have a position in that dual world, there are certain things where good people do bad things for good reasons. That's just a form of crafting, as my grandfather would have called it. When a human is dying to self, what do they naturally have to do? They dissolve and then they coagulate. But at a certain period of time, nobody wanted to accept the fact that they had no right to spiritually humble someone because it wasn't their position. It was out of divine order. The things that they were taking into their own hands were not of order. It was of chaos. So watching that realm of the world be completely manipulated and misused out of proper order was spiritually offensive to me. Anyway, I'm going off on a rant here. But just personally, I want to say thank you, Mr. Curtis, for coming out publicly. Good luck with your reviews in Los Angeles. I'm sorry we missed our interview today, but you guys, you need to wake up. You are sleepwalking in a world where real things happen, and it is a parallel world, and it is ran, and it's operated, and it's managed, but you're sleepwalking. You're sleepwalking. And if you're not prepared for it, if it should ever come to you, or should one of your beautiful children ever fall into it, here you are.